I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm just breathing in your energy right now because of all of the places I've been able to go and the people I've been able to meet since I started in this role. I was most excited about this invitation from your incredible organization to be able to come and be with you, because I have this practice to start my day with gratitude, end my day with gratitude, and I've just decided it's gratitude all day long. Why start and end? It's like all day long. And when I think about gratitude and you all and what you've done and what you are doing and what I know you're going to do for our children and our communities and all of the people that look to you for leadership, I'm overflowing with gratitude. And I hope you're doing what you need to do. You're in Puerto Rico. Are you taking care of yourselves? Like, come on. It doesn't sound like it. Wait, did you give them some permission to have some fun? Absolutely. I feel like I'm with my friends and my colleagues to be able to be with all of you. And Donis, thank you. Where did you just go? Donis, thank you for that really beautiful and warm introduction and recognizing my role in San Diego and the work that I did there. San Diego's home, and it always will be. But I live in Washington, D.C. now. But I also have to say thank you to, there's a whole big group back there that's doing all the tech. Have we said thank you to the tech people yet? Thank you. It's the kind of people that make these things work, and it's magic because you don't quite know how it works, and it always works. So I always like to say thank you to them and any hotel staff. If there's hotel staff around here, to say thank you. The guy at the bar back there, he's waving. And then, of course, AFSA. Do you want to recognize your staff from AFSA who's here? All the AFSA staff that have put this together. Where are they? 50th anniversary of this incredible organization. It's your history of this organization. It's your journey that matters so much, and it's the stories that have already happened because of your organization and the stories that are continuing to unfold that inspire me and inspire you all to be able to be the leaders that you are. And so I love a good story. I love a good journey. I believe that our journeys matter, and the journeys that have gotten us to where we are now, right here today in Puerto Rico. How did this all happen? I just think about the power and the influence sitting here in this room right now. So much power. And I think of it kind of as a love story, because you've all come to this place in your career and in time and this organization through your own separate journeys, but there's this common journey, and the journey to lead and the journey to serve and the journey to be part of something bigger than yourself. And when I think about power, I'm not talking about the kind of power that comes with your title. We all have titles that have some type of power associated with them, and the jobs that we have, the titles on our business card, but I'm talking about a deeper power. And that power, that energy that comes from something that's planted in your heart, and it's your journey, and it's yours and yours alone, and your sacred journey that you lead from every single day. And that it brought you to this place and this time, and that it gave you an opportunity to lead through our country, our world's most challenging time. And leaders could look in the mirror and say, how did I have to be the one that had to lead through a global pandemic? Or they can look in the mirror and say, I got to be the one to lead my community, my beloved community, and it got to be me. And as hard as it was, I got to do this, to shepherd a community through something where there weren't answers. And as Donna said, I was a superintendent at San Diego Unified School District on March 13th, 2020, when the pandemic started, and we had to make a decision, the hardest decision of my life, to find a path where there was no path, to make a decision where decision makers weren't making decisions, that had to lead from a sense of purpose. And my power and my energy did not come from my title. It came from looking at the community that I served and cared most about, and gathering myself around with people that I cared about to say, how do we find a way forward? Isn't that what we do as leaders? Our power doesn't ever come from our position, and we can use our formal authority, and believe me, we do, don't we, as leaders? When we need to use our formal authority, we will use it. But it's our moral authority that really guides us and gives us our true north. And so I think about our jobs and what job do we have, and for me, My job, I mean, when I was superintendent, that was the biggest surprise in my life. I never planned to be a superintendent, and I definitely never planned to have this job that I have right now. But I did have plans for my life and my life's work. And my life's work, while it wasn't associated with climbing some career ladder, it was associated with being able to make a difference and to work in community, with community, for community, to make a difference. And so when I think about all of the work that we've done and look back at what you've all done for the past 2 years, it's astounding. In San Diego, what we had to do when we closed, San Diego Unified is the second largest district in California. And to figure out how to have continuity of meal services, continuity of learning, getting Chromebook computers passed out to 80,000 students and Wi-Fi hotspots to homeless shelters, and have teachers pivot their practice to online and figure out how to keep everybody safe and all of those things. Well, I was really clear on what our mission was. And what our mission was didn't change. But how we did our work had to change significantly. And while our schools in San Diego and many places across the country, the brick and mortar buildings were closed to keep our community safe, what I saw were hearts and minds got opened, and people figured things out, and they did it together in no short order because of many of you and what you've done to get your community to remember and understand and name what it cares most about. That's how we move forward. And as if a global pandemic wasn't enough, what we've been facing as school leaders who care so much about our communities, we've had hateful policies that silences the expression of our LGBTQIA+ students and staff in some of our states. We're watching that happen. But we are not people who just watch. We're people of action. We know who we work for. When we see women's rights, we see gun violence and school safety, so much on the line, we turn back to our why. We turn back to our North Star. And here we are, finding a way where there is no way. Here we are. Well, you found your way to Puerto Rico, so you definitely know how to find your way. My favorite author is a woman named Margaret Wheatley, and her original book that I read when I was a third grade teacher many years ago was called Leadership in the New Science. And she applied principles of science principles to human organizations and human living systems. And one of my favorite quotes, I have a lot of favorite quotes from her, but she's recently talked a lot about warriors of the human spirit. When I think about a warrior and North Stars and finding your way and warriors out on battlefields trying to figure out tactics and moves and what they're going to do, what Margaret Wheatley talks about is the warrior, a different kind of warrior, a warrior of a human spirit who sees societal problems and responds with meaningful contribution and action and doesn't run from challenge but runs towards it, and gets people together in community to solve problems and getting a community. Her most famous quote that I love, I have a poster in my office, that is something so precious about a community discovering what it cares most about. And when a community is discovering what it cares most about, there's usually a leader that gathers that community together to help that unfold, to help that journey and that story unfold so the community understands and their hearts get open and they realize what they care about. And so those are the ways that when things get so hard and we're attacked from every single side, I know you've been there. Look, I was superintendent for 8 years, public board meetings every 2 weeks. You know what the attacks can look like. You can be attacked from every single side, but when you've got your true north and you can continually reconnect to your why, you're just never lost. You're just never lost. You can bend, but you don't need to break. And that's what I know you all have been doing. I never imagined in a million years, that I would be here in Puerto Rico, here in Washington, D.C., here serving President Biden alongside Secretary Cardona. But what I know is I've always been guided, and I think you have too, or you wouldn't be in this room, and you wouldn't be part of this great organization, is you've discovered what sets your heart on fire. And you've followed that. You know what drives you. You know what gets you up every day. You know when it seems there's no way, you find the way because you know where that North Star is. Although folks try to divert your attention to something else, don't they? But when you believe, like I believe, in the hope and the promise of public education in our country, when you believe, like I believe, that your demography does not need to determine your destiny, when you believe in the power of people coming together to give children an equitable education where students are known by name and by strength and by need, and when you believe that equity is each and every student gets what they need, when they need it, in the way that they need it, and not just the students, but their parents and caregivers and community, when you believe all that, nothing takes you off course. You just keep going, and you're clear. And all of the things that are trying to divert you don't matter as much. So I'll tell you a little of my journey, because I think my journey is mine and yours is yours, but when you understand what got you to where you are, and I'm not talking about title and power and position, I'm talking about like where are you in this place in time so that you have the strength and courage and tenacity to keep leading. For me, I mean, it happened when I was 5 years old and I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I don't need to take you all the way back that far because they told me I only have 45 minutes, so I won't go all the way back, but I will go back to probably, well, it was September 11th, 2001. I was well into my teaching career at that point. I taught for 7 years at a private school. I was several years in a school that was a suburban district. That was 50% poverty. 50% of the students lived in Section 8 housing across the street from the school where I was a third grade teacher, and 50% of the kids lived in the houses on the hills from homes where the parents were college educated. And I had come from a school where 100% of the students came from families where both parents were college educated. So I was at this place where I saw some struggle and some challenge. And I could see that at that school there was a double standard. And some kids were given the opportunity of having teachers who believed in them and knew they were going to college. And the district had taken that school and said, you know, don't worry, they're the lowest performing school in this high performing district, but that's okay, it's because they have the Section 8 housing across the street. You know, what do you expect? And a group of us teachers are like, what do you mean, what do we expect? We expect that all children are going to learn given the right supports, teachers getting the supports they need, and students getting what they need. It's completely possible. So we challenged it. We challenged this idea that just because they came from the Section 8 housing that they weren't going to achieve. And we started making a difference. And I taught kindergarten there. So I had the kids that came into my classroom the first day of kindergarten, one's from the apartments and one from the houses, and the ones that came from the apartments had never held a book, never held a crayon, didn't have somebody reading to them. The ones from the houses had mommy with baby Einstein on the belly when they were pregnant. Like, they definitely had different experiences before they walked into my kindergarten classroom. But I'm a teacher. I know how to teach, not some children, not the ones that are ready, but all children. That's what my credential's for. And so you teach them. And when people ask me, by the way, when people ask me what I do now, like on the plane down here, you run into strangers, oh, what do you do? I don't tell them that, like Donna's couldn't say it, Deputy Secretary of Education, what is that? I just am a teacher, because that's who I am, I'm a teacher. And thanks to President Biden and the Biden-Harris transition team and the team that put together the Department of Education, 1 in 3 of the political appointees at the Department of Education today, 1 in 3 of us are classroom teachers. Thank you to President Biden. So I was at that school, and we were interrupting implicit, explicit bias that had existed for a long time because those kids were thought to have not being able to learn. Do the best you can, make sure they get a turkey on Thanksgiving and do a shoe drive. No, how about teach them? How about make sure they have what they need so they can succeed? So I did that work at that school, and then September 11th happened, and I realized, what am I doing here? What am I doing at this school where half of the children need to make sure that the school works for them? The other half we're going to do fine with or without a great teacher and a great school environment. And I decided that I wasn't going to sign up for the military, although I have great respect for our armed forces. I have great respect for that work. That wasn't my journey because I was a teacher. So I decided I was going to leave that district, leave that school, and go to San Diego Unified School District, and go to a school in San Diego Unified School District that was 100% poverty, 85% English learners. It was pre-kindergarten through 5th grade. every risk factor known to public education, because if I believe in the hope and promise of public education, I believe school can make a difference, I believe your demography is not going to determine your destiny, it was time to prove it to myself, and I was going to go to what I considered in our field the front lines. Because if I could do it at that school, I believe the response to hate and hurt and violence and indifference and divisiveness that I was seeing in our country after those attacks is a more literate populace, is a more peaceful populace, a populace where you can understand one another, you come from different perspectives, you come from different beliefs, but literate folks, people who have a powerful literacy, not just literacy that they can decode and they can read. I'm talking about a literacy that understands science literacy, math literacy, reading and writing for multiple purposes and audiences, and being able to get into critical discourse where you're not taught what to think in school, but you're taught how to think. And so I'm ready to go, and I went to this school in California at the time, had a personalized license plate. My San Diego friends will know because they saw me drive around the city with this. But they had this personalized license plate with an American flag on it, and you could pay extra to personalize the plate, and the extra money was going to go to children who lost a parent in the September 11th bombings. And so I got that plate, and I got the word literacy written on the plate, because literacy was my way forward out of the heartbreak that I felt for our country and our nation. And literacy, as I made the trip into San Diego Unified, my mother thought I was a crazy person. My mom's a CPA, everything's got to add up. She's like, wait, you're quitting this good job in the Northern District and you're taking a cut in pay? And my mom thought I was crazy. I'm like, Mom, I need to go back and give back to the community where I was raised. And I want to work in that school, and I want to make a difference, and I want to show how public education can work. And at the time, I said, I'm not working for San Diego Unified. Maybe I shouldn't talk like that now, but I said I don't work for the district, I don't work for the Board of Education, I didn't work for the superintendent, I was working for my community. And do you always remember who you work for? Because that's where your North Star is, to always remember who you work for. There's someone that signs your paycheck, there's a name on your business card, there's a title, but understanding who you work for and how you're showing up in the world every day is what powers me, it's what drives me, and somehow I ended up in Washington, D.C. But before I get to that, the work that we did at Central Elementary, it was a school, like I told you, 100% poverty, 85% English learner, every risk factor known to public education existed on that campus. Students were experiencing so many levels of trauma, so much turnover of staff, so many things were happening in terms of loss and heartbreak at that community. Students experienced parents with homelessness, incarceration. San Diego's a border town, so there was deportation, there was gang violence, all sorts of things that could stand in the way of children's genius being unlocked and living their best lives. And yet you get a community that discovers what it cares about, and you begin to develop the tools and the resources and the supports that a school and the students need, and things begin to happen. There wasn't a garden, so we needed a garden. We built a school-based garden. There wasn't a school-based health center, and we had students that had significant needs that were beyond what a teacher was going to be able to do in the classroom. So we knew we needed to do something. We built a school-based health center. And one thing after another, we began to build the community around what our students needed, and that's why we say you discover what a community cares about and then create the path forward. And there's no common solution everywhere. What that school needed is what that school needed, and they understood what we needed. And the motto at Central, we called it the Central Way, and we said to be successful in school and in life, you follow the Central Way. Work hard, be kind, dream big, no excuses. And that's the work that we did at that school. And then after 10 years, and by the way, when I showed up at the school, the teachers said, don't worry, they knew I was coming from the Northern District. We'll chew you up and spit you out like the rest of them. You're not going to last here long. Good luck. You're going to need it. It was the biggest surprise to all of them that I stayed 10 years, and I probably would have never left had the Board of Education not contacted me and said they wanted to make me superintendent. I'm like, do you guys get I'm an elementary principal? And they're like, yeah. We want to see the kind of work that was happening at that school. It was a community-based school reform effort, and they wanted to see that be something the whole district did. So I became superintendent in 2013, and when I became 2013, when I became superintendent, the 10 years before that, there had been 7 superintendents. During the whole 10 years I was at that school, remembering my true north, I know who I work for. I work for this community. I'm going to create conditions for this community for the students to thrive and achieve and succeed. And during that time, there were 3 or 4, San Diego people will remember, 3 or 4 permanent superintendents and then interims in between each of that. And you know, as principals, sometimes you just put your head down and hope you don't get in trouble by the district office. And so, that's what I did. I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to do what I can do. And during that time that I was principal at that school, I started as a teacher at the school, and then I became a vice principal, became a principal. I had several different jobs, but I did the same work. During the time that I was at that school, my husband, Sergio, who I'm dedicating my speech to today, Sergio's from Mexico City and moved to the United States when he was 5 years old. We met when I was 17. We have one son. Our son is 27 years old now. Just at the time I was becoming principal of this school, my husband suffered a massive stroke. He was in the ICU. We didn't know whether he was going to live or die. We didn't know what was going to become of him. And that's when I knew this daily gratitude practice, like, what am I going to do? I know you, as leaders, what you do. You do everything for everybody else, and then there's nothing left for you. And so at that moment, my son was turning 13. My husband was becoming permanently disabled, never able to work or drive a car again. And I was becoming principal of a school with thousands students whose fault, it was not their fault that their brand new principal's husband was permanently disabled and was going to need my attention. And so what do? I couldn't turn my back on any of that. And so that's when I made a promise to myself. I read my favorite poem by Mary Oliver called When Death Comes, and my favorite line from the poem says, at the end of my life, I don't want to just say I visited this world. I want to say I was a bride, married to amazement. And I decided that every single day, I was going to find a way to find something beautiful, something to pay attention to, something that I knew I could lift up and center me in gratitude. And it was before iPhones. I had a little cheap digital camera I bought, and I decided I was going to take a picture every day of something I thought was beautiful. I was going to do it for 365 days. And I did it. I did it for 365 days, every day, no matter how hard my day was, and they were hard days. Go to the hospital every morning, pick my son up from school, have to do 8th grade math because my husband used to do the 8th grade math and he couldn't do math anymore, and lead a school. But every day, there was always something beautiful that I could pay attention to and lift up and connect to. And I never wavered from the why of giving the students at that school what they needed, when they needed it, in the way that they needed it. And then 10 years later, the Board of Education wanted to know if I wanted to be superintendent. And when I became superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, nothing changed in terms of my why. My job changed a lot. The day-to-day, what I was doing looked very different. But at the end of the day, my why was still the same. My North Star was still the same. See, this is what happens when you're clear about your why. This is what happens. When you know what you're trying to accomplish, you might not know exactly how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen or where you're going to be doing your work. All of that, the how and the when and the where, all of that gets all figured out by something that it's better, I've learned, if you try not to direct that. Let the how and the when and the who and the where get worked out in a bigger grand scheme. Just get super clear on your what and your why, and don't let anybody take it from you. So that's where I am now. Now my where has completely changed. Now I'm in Washington, D.C., but I'm serving our nation's students. And the way in which I do my work and what I bring to the work with the team with Secretary Cardona is the same passion and belief and daily practice to wake up every single day and say, how is this going to help kids? How is this going to help school leaders? How will this help a community get what it needs, when it needs it, in the way that it needs it? Is this going to stand in the way, or is this going to help? I do it every single day. I bring that work, and I get to now apply that kind of work and that kind of passion at the national level and figure out at this time in history when we see the largest investment, thank you to President Biden for the American Rescue Plan and every single Democrat and no Republican that voted for it. We get to see this investment that's historic in terms of what we're going to do for our students. I want you to know Secretary Cardona and our team, the entire team at the Department of Education, we always consider ourselves partners with you, fighting in any way that we can to help you do the sacred work that you're doing. We know it can't just be teachers and administrators doing it all by yourself. You need a community-focused approach. You need the community to gather around you and be a part of it, because nothing good happens when it happens all by itself, but when it happens in sacred relationship in community, it's always the best. That's why the Full Service Community Schools Expansion Act, which I had to make sure I said it right, is going to add an additional $3.6 million to support and expand the full service community schools, because we know that investment matters. We're very committed to that and making sure that that moves forward. And then we just announced a couple of weeks ago our National Partnership for Student Success. At the root is the things that I've always believed in as a teacher, but now we have a national partnership for student success, and that's pulling together almost 100 organizations nationally that have committed to recruiting 250,000 more Americans to serve as academic tutors, mentors, student success coaches. President Biden, in his State of the Union address, made this call to action, and we are now putting it into place with the National Partnership for Student Success, and the organizations that have come together for this nationally to say, we know school leaders, you need help. It's enough to just get your schools open and give your students what they need right now. We know you need help, and we want to help you with that help to take one thing off your plate if we can, and to know that we will help at the national level make sure that there's a trusted adult in their corner. More adults, not less adults, helping our students matters. And then to align with the National Partnership for Student Success, last week we announced the second initiative that fits with it is Engage Every Student initiative, and that's building on the national partnership, and it's focusing on the out-of-school time for students. And how do we make that out-of-school time more quality? We know we need additional academic programming and summer programming for students, and this out-of-school time shows how you can use the American Rescue Plan dollars to enhance and add more power to that engaging every student's after-school time. And then the last one is, of course, the partnership the community schools programs. If you are not already a community school or you're not looking into that, the network around community schools and the investment in there is significant, and it allows you to lead in the way where you help your community discover what it cares most about. And now there's money. For 8 years as superintendent, 8 years, I presented a budget to my Board of Education that included significant cuts. I had to cut for 8 years and still deliver on equity. And we did. We had results. I can only imagine San Diego now, you don't have to cut. You actually have money. The principals are happy over here. I don't know if it's like that everywhere else, but there is money. And we know of all of the challenges that you have right now. Take these investments, make wise investments. And we know the struggle right now around the teaching profession. You need to know Secretary Cardona has made a very strong commitment to uplift the teaching profession, because it doesn't matter how much money you have, if you have teacher shortages like we're about to face, it's a problem. And so there's a big commitment to uplifting the teacher profession, and Secretary Cardona made it a key point in his priorities that we're getting more teachers engaged, trained, and financially supported so that they can be successful in the schools. All of these initiatives, all of these programs come together in the ways at the federal level that we can help and add power to what you're already doing. But when I talk about power, I talk about the power that you already have within you. Know that we have your backs, we see you, we care for what you're trying to do, and we want to make sure everything that we're doing is actually supportive, and that you do well, not in spite of the federal government, but maybe hopefully because of the support that we're giving you, because that's what we want to do, to be committed to the work that you do. I just hope that while you're here in Puerto Rico, you circle yourself around the things that create the true north for you. What is your true north? What is your daily sense of gratitude? You could be a bridegroom married to amazement if you don't want to be a bride, but I'm a bride married to amazement, and every single day I ground myself in that work. And the reason I dedicate my speech today to Sergio is it would have just been our 31st wedding anniversary on July 7th. And I work every single day to act from a place of love on this journey of service, and to be able to be of service in community with you, And this organization, who has such heart for the school leaders to take exquisite care of them, because you cannot take exquisite care of your communities unless you take exquisite care of yourselves. And so I did lose my husband 6 years ago, but every single day, he lived for 10 years, by the way. Sometimes I tell the story and I always forget to tell the end. And people are like, how's Sergio now? He lived 10 years after his stroke. He saw me become superintendent. He was my #1 fan. You know he was my #1 fan if he watched every single board meeting, because he did. But he did not know that I became Deputy Secretary of Education. But he's with me, he's in my heart. And I just want to know, I'm with you. Secretary Cardona's with you. We're with you and your organization, and we're going to continue to lead with purpose and passion and bring our whole and complete selves to this work, because our students and our country needs us and is counting on us. We are the ones they've been waiting for. We are the warriors of the human spirit. Thanks for letting me be with you today. Thank you. Thank you.
Give a hand, what a